Welcome to another episode of the Lead with Levity podcast, where we help you navigate the ups and downs of leadership, career growth, building a fulfilling work life, right? I'm your host, Dr. Heather Walker, and today we have a truly exciting guest who embodies the idea of stepping outside of your comfort zone and embracing new possibilities. Our guest today has a story that will resonate with anyone who's ever wondered, what if? What's next? What if I took that leap? What if I explored a different career path? What if I figured out what actually got me excited at work? You know, mostly at work, but also just in life too. Even if it seems really far away from where I am today. So whether you're feeling stuck in your career or you feel like your career is just kind of getting a little bit stagnant, or you're looking for some inspiration to take the next step, today's conversation is going to offer some amazing insights for you. Today I'm speaking to Alisha Fernandez Miranda, author of the critically acclaimed book, My What If Year, and she's here to share her journey with us today. Alisha spent a year interning in a variety of different fields, exploring paths that were completely different from her previous work as the CEO of a consulting firm. And her story is really about the power of curiosity, the power of stepping away from that traditional path, right? And figuring out what fills her bucket, what is life all about, how can she show up with all the energy, all of her story is about the power of curiosity. She stepped away from her job as a CEO at a consulting firm, and she took a year and took unpaid internships for a year and explored all of these possibilities, all of these job possibilities. And these were jobs that she wanted to do, always wanted to do, but didn't think that those paths were for her because growing up, you know, she had responsibility. She was told, you've got to be responsible. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. You've got to take care of the bills. Choose the responsible path, right? Choose the money. The money is the best path. And one day she woke up and said, wait a second, I've been living my life on autopilot. And she decided to pivot and do something different. Now, for anyone who's going, wait a second, are we talking about quitting your job today? Yes and no. We're also going to be talking about what you can do where you're at. What you can do to reignite your life, get some more energy back into what you do. So if you're wondering about that and you're like, wait a second, I don't want to quit my job, or I don't want to tell people to quit their jobs, don't worry. We have some stuff for you too. Okay? So what if, my question for you today, what if you embrace the unknown? What if you open the door to new possibilities in your career? What if you open the door to new possibilities in your job? What if you open the door to new possibilities in your day? We're going to explore that today.
It's time for a sneak peek. Sneak peek, sneak peek.
It's okay if the thing you always thought you wanted isn't the thing you want anymore. Like, those are all legitimate, valid, important feelings that you need to listen to. And there's nothing wrong with having those thoughts. So that's kind of my first. I think that stops a lot of people before they even let themselves get to the point where they start to dream. And I think the second thing I would say is you have to dream, and you have to, sometimes as an adult with other responsibilities, you have to really intentionally create the space and time to dream and to think about whatever your what if might be or your what next might be.
And now, on with the show.
When you're feeling the pressure, take a moment to step back, pick up your marbles, and choose to lead with levity. Join us on the Lead with Levity podcast for fireside chats that will fill your bucket and help you get back to being the leader you were meant to be. Now here's your host, Dr. Heather Walker.
Welcome back to the Lead with Levity podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Walker, and I am beyond excited to introduce today's guest, Alisha Fernandez Miranda. Alisha is not only the author of the memoir, My What If Year, but she's also a powerhouse entrepreneur, the former CEO of IG Advisors, which is a social impact consultancy that has advised some of the world's biggest philanthropies and nonprofits. And what makes Alisha's story so compelling is her willingness to take a step back and say, wait a second, what am I doing with my life? What does my happy ever after look like? And her ability to pivot and just explore, what does life look like beyond that impressive corporate resume that she built for herself? Today, we're going to dive in. Alisha, welcome. How are you today?
Heather, I am great. Thank you for having me. I see that you're in a tank top and I'm in a sweater. So I guess we're both experiencing late summer, early fall in where we both are. It's already pretty cold in Scotland and it's been foggy all day today. So that's been fun.
You know, it's weird. I'm a little bit mixed up myself. Earlier today, I had a sweater on. And I don't know what to do because in Texas, we've had 100+ degree weather. And then wow. I think we got to like 95 and now I'm freezing. And so I put the sweater on and then I said, that's ridiculous. It's summertime. What am I doing? Take that off. You're indoors. You can control the temperature, Heather. That's right. You have the power.
You make it however warm or cold you want. Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, no, we're not reaching triple digits here anytime soon. So
I'm so jelly. Now, what has it been like for you living abroad?
Do you know, it's like almost hard to remember when I lived in the US because I'm now approaching my 18th year of living abroad. So I'm about to hit the point in my life where I have lived in the UK almost as long as I lived in Miami, which is where I grew up. And I still consider myself very much a person from Miami, a native Miami and a native Floridian. But it's kind of a really weird shift to now think that I will have spent almost as much time and increasing time overseas than I did back in Miami. So, you know, I love it over here. It's a very different kind of lifestyle. And I just really like the feeling of not always knowing quite exactly what's happening around you. You're always learning new things when you live abroad. You're kind of figuring things out as you go along. And that slightly unbalanced discomfort, which I think is like pretty, now that you've read my book, you can see that that's something I chase in a lot of different elements of my life. And I think it's true for where I live as well. You know, I became a British citizen in 2014, but I'll never really be British. I'm always going to be an American and specifically a Cuban American living abroad. So
yes, you have to work on your accent first.
People are always so they're like, how long have you been here for? I'm like, I know, I haven't lost it. It's never going away. Just embrace it, everybody.
I love that because, you know, I figured out personally a long time ago that the biggest transformations, personal transformations, happen when you decide to step outside of your comfort zone and do those things that you're kind of interested in, but you're totally scared of, right? And to say, I'm going to take that leap. Even traveling and going to countries where maybe you don't speak the language, that is an eye-opening moment. And for me, it just opened my world to all kinds of opportunities, possibilities, seeing other people for who they are, human. We're all human out here living this human experience.
Absolutely.
And one thing that really resonated with me about your story, I told you this before we started recording, and I'm going to share this again. So I came across Alisha when I was in the airport on my way back home, just rushing, Chicago airport. And they had this little tiny library in there. And I went in and I saw her book, My What If Year, and I thought, wow, this is fascinating. Alisha, can you tell us a little bit about your story and what made you decide I'm going to quit my job, a job that on paper, everyone might say, oh, you're successful. You've reached the pinnacle of your career. You're doing all the things. You've got the man. You've got the kids. You've got the business. You've got everything, right? All of the ladies, all the single ladies, right? You've got it.
Yeah.
So what inspired you to embark on this journey?
So, I grew up, as I mentioned, in Miami, daughter of immigrants, really high achieving, driven, ambitious kid. Like, I was at 8 years old. I have a diary from when I was 8 years old, and it says, "What is your goal in life?" And I said, "My goal is to go to Harvard." And I don't even know how I knew about Harvard. Like, nobody I knew went to Harvard. Legally Blonde hadn't come out yet, so that was not like a kind of tentpole for me. And I had no idea why, but it was the best. And I always wanted to be the best. I wanted to do the best. And that was always the thing that was driving me. And I kind of went through my life just barreling down this path of what I thought it meant to be successful and what I thought achievement was. I did well in school. I did go to Harvard for my undergrad, went to graduate school. I got married, now in retrospect, so young. I was 25 when I got married, which is like crazy young. When my kids are like, we should get married at 25, I'm like, no, you need to wait till you're at least 30.
30. Definitely 30.
30 at least. 30 at least. But that's still, I haven't quit my husband yet. So that was a good decision, I think, getting married then. But I was just so focused on achieving this list of goals that I had set out to achieve. And I moved to the UK. I had twins in 2011. My husband and I set up our consulting business, IG Advisors, which you so beautifully described in the intro. And I took over as CEO. And I was just, it was on paper exactly not just what looked like a great life, but it was exactly the life that I thought I had wanted. It was the objective I had set out for myself. I got there. And in 2019, when my twins were 7, turning 8, and things were going well with the business, everything was so smooth, and I started to get this horrible feeling that maybe this wasn't where I was supposed to be after all. Maybe I was supposed to be chasing a different path. Maybe I should have done something different back when I was with my blinders on, driving forward to whatever I thought success or achievement was.
Wait, pause. Horrible feeling came from nowhere, or did something happen?
It was not one thing, but I think it was many years of not paying attention to probably a lot of warning signs that would have told me before that I needed to make some changes in my life. And, I have my twins are about to turn 13 now. And I have a lot of friends with much younger children. And I say to them, those first 5, 6, 7 years of your children's life, if you have children, you're just barely keeping your head above water. If you're a working mom, especially.
Right.
So I was growing a business. I had these young kids. There was no time to sit and think like, am I happy? Am I in the right place? Am I doing the right thing? And it was kind of this moment that coincided with my kids being a little bit older and kind of more independent and off on their own, the business being more established and having a good team. And the second that I quieted all of that noise in my head that was like to-do list after to-do list after to-do list, I was like, whoa, something is going on here. And I probably haven't been paying attention, but now that I've seen it, I can't unsee it. And it really set me off in this kind of big emotional quandary for a year, if not more, where I recognized that I was unhappy and I needed to make a change. And I was terrified of doing so precisely because I had done all those things that I set out to do. Like, how could I possibly want anything different? This is what I always wanted.
Right.
So something must be wrong with me if I don't want those things anymore. So I did what everybody does in those situations. I decided to leave my job and go take internships at all the dream jobs of my childhood for no money and with no foreseeable plan ahead of that, and just do it. So yeah, that's what my book is about.
Yes, it sounds like you had a midlife moment.
Totally. I call it my midlife crisis because I would like to not think of 40 as midlife, although very, very much in the middle years, I would say at the moment. But yeah, it was a real crisis, a crisis of confidence, a crisis of faith in myself and my abilities and what I was doing. And I'm such a person with a plan always. And all of a sudden, I didn't know what the plan was going to be.
Yeah.
And it was really scary.
Yeah.
It was scary to feel for really the first time in my adult life that since I had started to pay attention to it, that maybe I needed to be somewhere else. And that was very scary. I was no longer like a 21-year-old college student being like, I'm going to go study abroad because I need to find myself. I had kids and a house and a husband and a company and all of these responsibilities and obligations that weren't just going to go away. So it was a pretty terrifying time.
I could imagine. I've seen this and I've heard this. I've experienced this myself even. It's so easy to find yourself kind of sliding into those places where if you're not careful, you're running on autopilot, following the plan, like, yes, I got the job. Yes, I've got the promotion. Yes, people think I can do this, and so I'm stepping into this. And then you look up one day and say, wait a second, is this really feeding my soul? Is this really what I want? Is this? And so that can happen. What's funny is it can happen when you're successful. It can happen when you're not successful. It could happen at any point in time. So do you believe that people should just quit everything when these moments happen? So you did that. And
I sort of did that. I mean, okay. So my what if year is like a much better title for a book than my what if 2 weeks or my what if month.
Yes.
But originally when I was setting out to do this, I wasn't planning on quitting my job. I was going to take time off. I called them mini sabbaticals, which nobody actually used that terminology but me. But I was like, I want to do these internships. I'm going to plan the first 2 right away. And they're going to last between a month and 6 weeks. And I'm going to basically do everything I was supposed to do in that month or 6 weeks before and maybe after and maybe a little bit at night and on the weekends. So I can go and have these kind of extraordinary experiences that I desperately, desperately want to have. I think something I have heard from a lot of people since the book came out, they're like, oh, you're so brave. And I was like, I don't actually think I'm that brave of a person. Like, thank you. But I had like a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. I had covered all my bases. I am a risk-averse person in spite of what it looks like based on reading my memoir. And so, no, I don't think that quitting your job and throwing all your caution to the wind is for everybody. And frankly, it wasn't really for me. But I started with something very small. At first, I started with only one internship. I blocked off 1 month in my calendar. And I said, I'm going to go do this. And then I'm going to see where it goes. And then I had gotten a second one. And I was like, okay, well, that's a few months later. I can come back into work. I can still manage everything I need to do. And I think in part that was because I was trying to, keep things steady on the home front. But in part, I was very afraid of the bigger change that has subsequently happened in my life. It was much easier to think about it in terms of these little, like I was taking little vacations from my real life. And then I was going to come back in and I'd feel better and everything would be fine. And I'd be right back on the path that I was on before. And that's really what I was telling myself at the beginning. So, I'm a big fan of starting small. I know there are people out there who are able to take a huge leap all at once. But I think what I did in my own journey was a lot of very small steps in a different direction that ended up being quite a significant distance. But over time and with thought, I definitely didn't just like Thelma and Louise it, just, leave the house and run.
Right. Didn't it start with just sort of taking a look at your calendar and saying, wait a second, I need some breathing room. I need some breathing room to just think about what is important to me. What am I interested in? What am I passionate about? To reconnect with myself.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, that was chasing this dream that I had always had my entire life, which was to be involved in some way in musical theater. I grew up loving musical theater. I never did anything with musical theater. I was always very afraid of rejection. I was very afraid of, the idea that I could even do like an artistic career just did not seem feasible. That was not something that people with my responsibilities did. That was like if you had inherited family wealth, you could go and do an
Yeah.
artistic career or something like that. But not for me. That was not the path that I was going to go down. But still, when I thought about the things that made my heart sing, that really lit me up, it was the performing arts, it was music, it was acting, it was these incredible people putting on a show, and even a bad show. Like, I wanted to be part of it. And so the plan originally was to take this month and to try to find an opportunity in New York on Broadway somewhere, completely unpaid, doing literally anything they wanted me to do, get coffee, scrape gum. I didn't care. I would do anything to just have this experience of being a part of a musical.
Yes.
And for me, that's what I it was like that wild dream that I didn't think I could ever be able to accomplish, and I did. And it's different for everybody. Not everybody feels the same way about musical theater. But certainly for me, that was what I really wanted to do.
So let's give some people some advice here. For anyone who is maybe listening and we've struck a chord with them, or they're thinking, whoa, wait a second. I think that might be me. I think I might be not happy where I'm at right now, doing what I'm doing right now. What advice would you have for them to help them find those things that they are passionate about, that light them up, that give them more energy?
So I think the first thing I would say is that it is possible to be happy and even comfortable in the place that you are and still want these other things, right? Like, so, I had a lot of guilt for even thinking that it was possible to do something different when I felt like I had been given so much. So, put that feeling aside as step one. Like, just validating that it's okay to want different things. It's okay to want to explore new things. It's okay if the thing you always thought you wanted isn't the thing you want anymore. Like, those are all legitimate, valid, important feelings that you need to listen to. And there's nothing wrong with having those thoughts. So that's kind of my first. I think that stops a lot of people before they even let themselves get to the point where they start to dream. And I think the second thing I would say is you have to dream, and you have to, sometimes as an adult with other responsibilities, you have to really intentionally create the space and time to dream and to think about whatever your what if might be or your what next might be. And I'm a big fan of Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. She recommends things like taking yourself on artist dates once a week. And those are fun. I never have time for those. But the premise of it is to spend some time with yourself, doing something that's not for any reason, but just kind of pure enjoyment or time, or just that, having that moment with yourself. You could go for a walk in a park in near your neighborhood. You could go to an art museum and look at an exhibition, but to spend some time with yourself. And I think that is where, it can be really scary. Sometimes when you quiet everything else out of your head, it can be frightening what you hear.
Very true.
You have to listen to that voice. And I think that the way that we live our lives now, the fact that we have a phone attached to us almost all the time, and if not, we're reading or we're watching something or we're doing things and we're working, it's so hard to find that space. And it's not just going to like gradually come upon you. So you have to make it for yourself. Take a bath. I would say taking a bath is like a great way to create space for yourself as well. Like, just lock yourself in your bathroom. Don't bring your phone with you. Get in the tub and just sit and think and reflect. I think that making the space to dream is really step number one. And without actually kind of going for it and making it a proactive step, it's not just going to happen in your life. You really need to give yourself that time to do that.
Yeah. I talk to women all the time about this, and I hear things like, well, I don't want to be selfish, and I have to be there for my family. I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to cook, clean, go to work. I don't have any time for me. And so what you said really resonated. And I'm curious, what would your response be to someone who's like, well, but I don't want to be selfish. Isn't that selfish?
I mean, so I think you have to be a little bit selfish sometimes. Like, I don't think that selfishness, it gets a bad rap, right? But I think the opposite of it, which is always putting yourself last and being so selfless that you never take care of yourself, is not a great way to live either. I think when I hear people say that, well, when I hear the time point, I do say, how much time do you spend on social media? Which is not to hate on social media. I'm on Instagram plenty myself. But there is time sometimes in our days that we don't spend, we might be spending doing other things. And maybe there are things we really love, but people are always like, I never have time to read. I'm like, maybe, and I am the first one to raise my hand and say my screen time numbers are atrocious. But I put limits all over myself to make sure that I do take the time to do some of these other things. So I think there is sometimes time. I respect that sometimes there are periods where you will be just incredibly busy and when you're needed. Those things will happen, especially if you have children or other caring responsibilities and people leaning on you. You can't always be selfish, but sometimes you should be selfish because if you do not take care of yourself and your most basic needs, and I'm not just talking about like your basic physical health, there are plenty of studies that show that women are the last ones to get themselves checked up at the doctor. And, we put ourselves at the end of all of these lists. And if you do that, you are going to crack. You are going to burn out. Something is going to happen in your physical health or your mental health or your well-being. And then you truly won't be able to help anybody else because you will not be in a position to do that. So sometimes the least selfish thing you can do is take care of yourself, because that is making sure that you're then able to be your best possible self out in the world and for the people that love you and need you and care about you, and that you are doing all of these things for. For several of my internships that I did throughout the course of my year, I left home. I left my kids home with my husband and I went off to New York. I went up to the Isle of Skye, and I get that question all the time from people. Like when I was on my book tour, like, how could you leave your kids for a short period of time? And I say to them, I am a better mother now for having done this than I was before, because I am now a mother who is a person who feels fulfilled and happy in herself. And that's how I go forward and parent my kids. And that's different from when I didn't feel that way. So, I think it's important to be a little bit selfish sometimes. I recognize we can't do it all the time. But if you're constantly finding yourself at the bottom of the list, you need to switch that up somehow.
Yeah, yeah. Because, if you're the type of person who is, I'm doing for others, I'm doing for others, I'm doing for others, at some point you're going to start to resent all of those people. There's just
Totally.
there's just not enough energy to go around, and you need to be able to fill your cup back up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you think about all of those internships that you had, because we talked a little bit about the theater one, didn't you also work at a restaurant for a little bit?
Worked for a hotel and restaurant in very rural Scotland on the Isle of Skye. I worked for a contemporary art dealer in London, buying and selling high-end paintings and sculptures. And then so all of this happened in 2020. So that's important context for
Very
people
important
to have.
Context.
So during the kind of the initial stages of lockdown, the first lockdown, as we called it in the UK, which was sort of March through July, I did a virtual internship from my living room for a retro dance and fitness company. So a company offering fitness classes online during COVID, and I worked for them as well.
Ooh, okay. Can you share a standout moment from one of your internships that you'll never forget? Something that you said, "Ooh, I'm going to keep this and I'm going to take this with me forever."
Such a great question. I have so many, and in the book I write about so many of like the funny ones, because a lot of these internships were just me making a fool out of myself in a lot of different moments. But when you said that, the first thing I immediately thought of, so my final internship was at this hotel and restaurant in Northwest Scotland called Kinloch Lodge. It's a beautiful, beautiful, completely remote, family run, just really special place. And everybody was hit hard by COVID in different ways. Hospitality was hit incredibly hard. The hotel had shut down for months. They had just opened back up in the summer of 2020. And with lots and lots of restrictions in the UK about what they could and couldn't do and what people could and couldn't do and how they could gather. And I came in to start my internship there at the beginning of October when things were starting to get slightly worse in terms of numbers, but the hotels were still allowed to be open. Things were still going on, but every couple of days there were new restrictions that would come in. So any sort of gathering was heavily restricted here, and that meant weddings as well had to be very limited. So I cannot remember the exact rules, but basically one of the only situations in which you were allowed to gather as a group inside was for a wedding, but it had to be, I think, 10 or less people, maybe 8 or less people. And you couldn't drink alcohol inside at hotels, but you could drink it outside. And we're talking Scotland in October. So you're drinking with like an umbrella and a lot of rain. But, there were all these, there was such a complicated time, I guess, to think about having a wedding. But one of the days that I was working there was a wedding at the hotel. It was a young couple, 2 men. They were probably in their maybe early mid-20s. They had, I think, 6 people with them in total that came to celebrate. And, Kinloch is a really beautiful place. It's a special place. This was clearly something they had dreamed of doing in this really amazing place. And in spite of COVID, in spite of the fact that there were all these rules and that they could only have champagne outside and that they couldn't have it inside when they went in for their dinner, they had decided to go ahead with this wedding and get married. And so after months of this huge meta, like, is the world going to end? Will I ever see my family in the US again? Like, what is happening with COVID? And then these very like micro challenges in my own life. What am I doing? Am I leaving my job? What's making me happy? All of these things, all of that kind of took a backseat to this wedding. And this couple who just decided that they were going to be optimistic in the face of all of these challenges around them. And there was a moment where they were dancing with each other. It was kind of towards the end of the night and I was leaving and they were inside dancing and I was watching them through the window. And I just thought the sheer amount of hope and optimism you have to get married in a pandemic, to get married in, amid all of this in this way, and to say, you know what, I believe there's going to be brighter days tomorrow. And it just stuck with me. And I still think about it all the time now because, one, to be their waitress gave me this incredible opportunity to be part of their special day in a way that I wouldn't have experienced, not knowing them in any other job.
Yeah.
And it just was a reminder, this incredible reminder. I think that there is so much, in spite of really dark times, there are always things to be hopeful for. There is always reason to be optimistic out there. And it was this really just beautiful, beautiful day, kind of sandwiched in between a lot of really difficult days. And I felt so privileged to be able to be a part of it.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. You were able to take such a big insight away from serving a group. You were in service to them. That is amazing. So we've talked a bit about what you can do as maybe someone who's been in your career or in their career for a while and starting to feel like, I don't know, is this what I want to do? And I also want to take a look at this from another angle, the angle of someone who's just starting out. And the wedding is such a great segue into this because it represents sort of a new beginning, right? Now, imagine that there is someone who, young lady, young man, comes up to you and says, hey, you're talking to them and they're telling you about all of their career ambitions and what they want to do. And they want to be a VP one day and they want to rise. And they're inspired by your story. What kind of advice would you give them to help them see how can they stay true to themselves as they kind of think about advancement in their career?
That's such a great question. And I'm funny, one night, like maybe a year or so after my book had come out, I was saying goodnight to my daughter. And like apropos of nothing, she said, Mom, I think I'm just going to figure out what I want to do when I'm 20. So I don't have to have a what if year when I'm 40. I'm just going to figure it out early.
Yeah. Like you didn't have that same kind
Yeah,
of plan, right?
I was like, okay. I was like, maybe you need to read the whole book, sweetheart, because that's exactly what I'm talking about. But I do, I love when I have the opportunity to speak to young people in early stages of their career who know both the things I accomplished in my professional life, but then they also know about this internship story and that I kind of like chucked it all away to try something new. And I think one thing that I would say two things. One is that I want to impress on them the importance of really having this knowledge that there are very few decisions you make that you can't change your mind about in life. Like some of them are more painful to extricate yourself from than others. But I have friends who went through all of medical school and started practicing medicine to then decide they really wanted to write novels and decide they were going to do that. I think a lot of times people are afraid that they've been building towards something that they thought they want, and then it can be really, was it a waste of all of that time, that skill, that experience, And so in young people, I think that manifests itself as almost being like paralyzed sometimes to make choices or to feel this huge importance of the choices that they're going to make. So one thing I always say is like, look, it doesn't, everything you do is going to build up the person that you're going to become. Every job you take, every bad experience and good experience are all going to contribute to the you that you're going to be bringing to the table at 30, at 40, at 50, at 60. So don't worry if you take a job and you hate it. Don't worry if you try something and you've been doing it for a few years and then you decide you want to do something else. You've built up, everything is useful. Everything is part of who you are and part of the person that you're trying to become. So don't feel too overwhelmed about the fact that you have to make this choice. And I think the second thing that I would say specifically about not losing yourself and staying true to yourself in the process is just to remember the why all the time. And I think that's what I had forgotten in those years leading up to taking off to do these internships. I think I had lost sight of the why. Why am I doing this? Why do I think this is the thing that I should be spending my time, energy, resources on? Why am I in the place where I am? Sometimes that answer is simple and practical. I'm doing this job because I need the money. I live here because this is where my family is and I have responsibilities. And that's okay. But I wasn't even asking the question. And I think you have to ask the question. Don't stop asking yourself the question. That's when things will slide out of your ability to kind of really know what it is you're thinking. So I think don't lose sight of the why. Ask yourself why, even when you don't like the answer. But like, know why you're doing things. You only get one shot at life. And so you should be spending your time as much as you possibly can on making sure that you're aligned, your actions and your job and all of those things are aligned with whatever your why is and what it should be.
That makes perfect sense. So considering all of that, what is coming up for you? Are you still having what if moments? Are you still pursuing your why and figuring that out? Or like your daughter, have you said, all right, I've got the new path, I'm on it, let's go?
I still occasionally have not applied for an internship recently, but I'm often thinking about it. I try to, on a regular basis, explore things that are unusual or uncomfortable. On Sunday, I'm auditioning for a musical. I've never auditioned for a musical before.
That's pretty
in spite
big.
of my deep love of musicals. And as you've read in my book, my incredible skill at picking up trash after people who work on musicals, I have never auditioned for a musical ever. There's no way I'm going to get a part in this amateur production of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, but that's okay because I am terrified of auditioning. And so I have to do it. I have been playing tennis for a year. I'm still quite bad at it, but I really enjoy it. And so I go out there every single week with my tennis racket and hit the balls more or less in the court now after about a year. But, I'm always trying to figure out, am I doing enough to make sure that I haven't forgotten all of those lessons that I learned during that year, which was that I need to be spending time out of my comfort zone. I need to be doing stuff I'm not really good at and that has a high probability of failure. I need to be trying new things, even if I don't know they're going to go somewhere or be the right thing for me to do. So that's like a day after day kind of intentional choice that I make. And professionally, I have like 6 jobs and no jobs is what I say to people right now. So I still am involved in the business that my husband and I founded, but I'm no longer CEO. I'm just involved as chair. But philanthropy is always going to have a part of my heart, and that's part of my why. And so I still do a bit with some clients in that. I'm writing novels, which like talk about something with a high probability of failure and many chances for rejection. But I have a novel coming out next year, which is really exciting.
In spite of all of that.
In spite
Yes.
of all of it. It's on. I'm done. I'm done now. It's my 10th draft, 10th full draft. I mean, and even that I think for some people is not as many as you get to. So I just like the little engine that could. I keep persevering until someone says no. So I'm doing that. I'm still working with Harry Blaine, who is my art dealer boss. I spend about a day a
Oh,
week
cool.
doing all sorts of things with his business just to keep a foot in the art world, and because I enjoy it and I enjoy spending time with him, and I love to still have that kind of piece of my internship year with me all the time. And then I'm constantly putting out there, I think maybe the single best thing about putting my What If year out into the world for me was getting to connect with other people, particularly women who had felt the same way and done something about it, were at the beginning of where I was in my journey or were at the end, hadn't even thought there, but just knowing, feeling so validated by the fact that all of these feelings were so normal and that they were so common, and that there are so many incredible women out there who are not pursuing the things they want to be pursuing for lots and lots of reasons. So a lot of what I've been spending my time on is how to connect more with and to support women who are still questioning if they're ready to take this step. They have this amazing idea, but they don't know how to pitch it. So I have a retreat that's happening next month. I have some women coming over to Scotland that are going to go follow in the footsteps of the book with me. And we're going to do all these workshops and spend time really pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. We're going kayaking, and two of the women are like afraid of open water or don't know how to swim. So everyone is really taking some chances here. So excited about that. And I'm launching a series of workshops that are going to run for the rest of this year that are focused on pitching yourself, pitching your writing, pitching yourself for jobs, how to craft a story or a narrative about yourself if you want to pivot and leave and you're worried about what's going to come next. And just kind of experimenting with different ways to be helpful, use my story and my experience to help others. And that series is called Pitch Please, which I'm very excited about. It's launching on Monday.
That's cute. Okay. Now, you said a lot, and as you were talking, my mind went somewhere that I just have to pull on that string before we go. You mentioned, I know that I need to do this. I need to do this. I need to do this. I need to go outside my comfort zone. If I'm afraid, I need to do it. I agree, because I take on the same philosophy, but there are a lot of people who would hear that and say, what? That sounds insane. So
agree.
Why? I think it's important to say why. Why do you need to do those things? What does that do for you?
Those were the lessons of my internship year and my experience. Those were the things that I was missing, and that regardless of the job title on my business card or the job titles on my 6 business cards or whatever they were, those were the things I learned that had been missing from my life and that I needed to pursue. So when I say I need to do them, I don't think everybody needs to do them, but I found the things that I realized were important for me to wake up, to feel happy, fulfilled, like I am going in the right direction with my life. And those things for me are to learn new things all the time. And part of that is getting out of your comfort zone, but pushing myself to not always do the stuff that I'm the best at, but to put myself actively in situations where I don't know what's going on, or I'm not the expert in the room. You know, when I talk about moving out of my comfort zone, I get a real endorphin high from being able to do something that I didn't think I could do before. You know, even stuff I hate. I'm doing couch to 5K right now. Miserable. I hate running. But every time I finish a run, I feel freaking great. Not just because I ran, but also because I'm like, I didn't think I could do that, and I did it, and that makes me feel really good.
Yeah.
And so all of those things, those lessons are very specific to me. I think they will resonate with a lot of people because they're not completely unique to me, but those may not be the things that are getting you out of bed every morning and making you feel like you're on this earth living your best life. Whatever those are for you, you need to find them. I spent this crazy year and I found those things out. And so when I say need, that's based on trial, error, and experience. But I think for other people, that may not be your need. And that's completely fine as long as you're listening to what it is your heart is calling out for.
Yes, yes. And giving yourself the permission to say, okay, my life does not have to be etched in stone here. I'm still alive. So yes, I invested time, but that time, like you said, all of these experiences are building up who I am as a person over time. So my life is going to be so much more enriched if I go and do new things than if I stay stuck in one place doing the same thing over and over that I really don't enjoy doing to begin with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. Alisha, thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, yes. Do you have any advice, any last words before we go?
I would just say that if you already know the thing you want to do and you're scared of doing it, don't wait. Don't wait. Take one small step today in that direction. Maybe it's signing up for a class in the evenings about a subject you want to learn, or joining a tennis club, or starting stupid couch to 5K, which I love and hate at the same time. Like, do something really small, that tiny step in the direction that you want to. You'll be amazed at how good it makes you feel. And again, those are the things that are going to get you the far distance. So stop thinking you can't do it or you shouldn't do it. Just do it. Do one small thing today. That is my one piece of advice I would leave people with.
That's how you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. Yes.
Yes.
All right, Alisha, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This was so great.
Thanks for tuning in to the Lead with Levity podcast. To get resources mentioned in this episode and find out what we're all about, check us out at leadwithlevity.com.